approve the minutes.
So moved.
Any comments on the minutes? I've reviewed them. I think they're fair. Any other comments from anyone else?
Just, I'm going to abstain, obviously.
All right, well, so can I have a second to approve the minutes then?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to modify the agenda since we have an individual that's had their hand raised to public comment. So Raquel, can you add that person for the moment?
Yes.
It's time for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, more than welcome.
Yes, Keith should be joining.
I see Keith.
Hi, folks.
Hi, Keith.
Sorry about my studious atmosphere right here. Would you like me to share any of my public comments?
If you can, Keith, please state your name and your address for the record.
Keith Moranti, home address is 9 Governors Way, Madison, Connecticut.
Okay, go ahead.
My business location is at 15 Meigs Ave in Madison, Connecticut. I am the property owner as well as I hold my business there. And I not so long ago raised the question to Peggy initially, and she had some feedback for me. And then I also reached out to Peter regarding an adjacent property to me, which is Brookside Park, which is on the back parking lot side of the property that I own, which is everyone familiar with the property, subject property?
So it's between you and the Henny.
Essentially, yes. Yes. Yep, that property. So, since it is adjacent property, I've observed it for many a year, and the property has essentially been pretty neglected over the years. As of recently, there was lots of, it's ultimately the level of care is pretty much held to mowing only. There's a lot of trash. There is hundreds of little nip alcohol bottles there. There's tons of, now there's the whipped cream bottles that people used to get high on. And the other day, a couple weeks ago, I found a backpack filled with drug paraphernalia. So ultimately, as I observe and walk through the property on a regular basis, thought came to me that since there might be a use for it in town, or if it's not being used for anything, I raised the question to Peggy if the town would potentially look to sell the land that's unused, or have a thought on since my parking lot abuts to it, we are in desperate need of more parking. So I don't know if the town's ever raised or even thought about if they would be willing to unload the property, because I would be a happy purchaser.
I can bring this up if you want to share. Yeah, why don't you bring up the line so we can see what.
Well, I think what I had responded to Keith, that the process that we were undertaking obviously is to look at all these different parcels. I also had reached out to Erin, which she just hasn't gotten to it yet, is to look at the actual parcel. We need to have an internal discussion about the purpose, the deed history. So she was going to actually take some time to look at this. It's obviously in a strategic location. near our downtown, we just haven't moved it further, but I think Keith wanted to flag it, right? So that we're aware of it, as we go through our review process of kind of these orphan parcels that we have in town. um, you know, think different, right? About what we need and what the opportunities are for this parcel. So I appreciate you coming tonight, Keith. And we need to do a little homework on our end before we can
Sure.
even explore what the possibilities are for it. It might have been required open space as part of the development of Stop and Shop. There's a lot of different things that
Yeah.
might prohibit us from doing anything it, but most importantly, it's something that we should be maintaining. It's obviously an important part of our downtown.
So I think if Erin Mannix is being, I think she's the next step on this in terms of understanding and what should happen.
Yeah.
Really, she would affect the zoning as well as understanding of the various title issues and restrictions and those kinds of things that might be part of it, and whether or not the town would be interested. I mean, this committee is really an evaluatory committee, not one that's designed to actually execute our goals.
Right.
Recommendations. So thank you for bringing it to our attention, and we'll put it on our radar.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Peggy, for initiating that. Yeah, I know there's a regulatory process that has to be gone through, and I know you guys weren't necessarily the board to execute anything of that nature, but as Peggy said, it was a starting point, and being having a business downtown, I take great pride in, of course, our town and aesthetics, and so whatever. And if everyone's ever driven by my property, I try to maintain the nicest landscaping downtown. So with that said, I mean, I'm willing to be open to anything, whether it's a shared use or whether it's, I maintain it or whatever it may be. I'm open and willing to have an open dialogue. So I first appreciate you guys for listening and putting it on next step of whatever that may be, Peggy.
Okay, great. Thank you, Keith.
Thank
So
you, Keith.
just check back in the future, or would someone reach out, or
Yeah, well,
what's
I
the
think I will follow up with town staff. I know we had a correspondence last month on this, and I just
Yep.
need to prompt them to understand, first of all, how the property's owned, what the restrictions are on it, and all that before we can kind of go any further than that. So once I've done that, I'll reach out and let you know. Okay?
Awesome. Thank you,
Great.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Okay. Are there any other public comments? Raquel, anybody else online?
No.
Thank you. So I want to move on back to the RFPs. There's been, thank you for several people have given comments about the RFPs I distributed earlier. And I think we're still, I'm hoping that let me take it back one step. Are we close in terms of the concept of what we're asking for in each of the three RFPs? There were a couple clarifications that Peggy thought that one was a typo on the Memorial Town Hall. She also raised, we put in the background on the Jeffrey School about doing the review of Ryerson. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, no, I somehow I was reading these on my phone, I think, or my iPad, and I didn't catch that second paragraph. So I saw that after you'd mentioned it, and so I understand you've caught it in that, because that's why when I first read it, I thought the scope. Wait a second, what happened to Ryerson? But
Yeah, no, I have it in there. I just was being sensitive to several of the comments from both Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen that we really wanted the emphasis on Jeffrey. So I was downplaying, I wanted Ryerson to be part of it, but not as forward in the conversation. Give it a little less perspective. And then the third is nobody really made any comments on the open space one. I think that's pretty I, I added to that open space one, a list of all the properties and their addresses and their, GIS numbers, so it can be well identified. You should note that the properties that are on that list were the ones that we identified in the interim report, plus one on County Road that the Affordable Housing Committee asked to be included. So I added that to that property as well. So really, I think what we're down to now, if there's other comments, is the form of how this should be set.
Yeah, just one quick comment on the Morrill Hall. The only other comment I would have is obviously this was going to cause displacement of other users of the building. If we, just to assess any displacement, right? So I don't know if they do the reconstruction of the assembly hall, what does that impact in terms of like probate court and other users of the building? So I don't know if we would be looking for them to help us find other homes for them, or if we just want to highlight what functions would be displaced, something like that. I know this is more of an architectural art exercise, I guess, versus a space planning exercise, so maybe it's not appropriate for this one.
The big question I have for that site is it feasible to bring it back to its original design? And if it is, what would be the potential? If it came back to its original design and it's 50 seats, I don't think it does what we want it to do. So then we say
Right.
forget. If it's original design and it goes back to, with the powder house next door where the family services is now as, adjacent, and it was wonderful to get that's why I attached a lot of the drawings Peter had sent me. There were, in the 90s, there was drawings that were done by
East Wharf Architects.
John Matthews, that connected
Oh,
Powder House to the
oh,
Memorial Town Hall and they were using it more for different types of spaces, but it was a very, I think, elegant connection he made in that way, and where you could actually use that for dressing rooms and other kinds of things for people that would be out performing on the stage, green rooms, that kind of the back of the shop kind of functions. So by having all those drawings, I think there's a lot of good information that would be available that can expedite this process of someone looking at this and coming up with it. But the bottom line is, the question I have is, before we get into anybody getting displaced or where they would potentially go, is it at all feasible to bring it back to that design and satisfy that theater need that was one of the major drivers of the community center and academy? So that's kind of it's called the congregating space. So that would be the first objective. My understanding right now is that there really are three or four functions that are in there. You have the probate court, you have the historical archives, and then you have the meeting rooms. That are the kind of the three big pieces there, which I think can be, we obviously have to accommodate them in another way. The comment at last meeting was that if we ever had to move the probate court, we want to be sensitive because it is shared between Madison and Guilford, that it stay, probably should stay on the green. We'd have to be concerned about the location. I think I'm not sure who made the comment last meeting, but someone made a comment that they thought if we tried to put it here at the town campus, for example, it may not be as desirable as if it stayed on the green as a spot. So, but again, that's a secondary step in my view. And that my hope is that this becomes a very short and quick analysis that says, is this a go or no go, to kind of move that forward, because this creates a lot of dominoes in many respects, and it also creates a lot of opportunities for us. I think it's one of the key pieces for what we're trying to do.
Okay, no, that makes sense.
There was one of the comments that on the Jeffrey, Seth sent me an email today that he wanted to share with he wanted me to share with you all. I can just kind of give you a quick summary of what he said. His perspective was that so his perspective was that he thought that some sort of an umbrella RFP made some degree of sense, that he was supportive of something like that, and thought there could be some economies of scale by having people, one company bid on multiple components of it. That was one piece. The second piece he had was he was concerned about the presentation of having the Arts Barn as part of the comment on Jeffrey School, the Jeffrey RFP. And that his concern is that there's a significant amount of programming and community involvement in the Arts Barn, and that if anything happened, that it shouldn't just happen basically in the vacuum.
So,
read what he said. He said,
okay, yeah, because I can comment on that. I had a conversation with Robin, and she's aware.
And then I'll give you my response.
Yeah.
And then we can go from there. My concern is that I believe town leadership may be unaware of the full scope and nature of the programming that occurs at the farm. There seems to be a casual feeling that the town could just resituate programming to the Jeffrey cafeteria and stage, and that would work. The barn has a huge constituency of about 1,500 families who share an affinity not only for the barn's work and programming, but for the arts generally. There is a vast contingent of arts parents in town, which rivals the size and passion of the sports parents. In fact, this fact was reinforced recently when there was a huge outcry among the educational community, i.e. parents of school-age children, when the administration moved to reduce the arts time in the 4th and 5th grade curriculum as a means of keeping the teaming model for 4th and 5th grade students. Further, the barn has always found a way to offer programming that spans the gap between mainstream and marginalized students. So there's also a very passionate constituency of parents, marginalized and special needs students who rely on the barn for their children's primary socialization, confidence building, and friendship making. Point is, there will be an outcry bordering on revolt if Madison loses the Arts Barn programming and has been thriving here for over 20 years, over 25 years. I understand from my exposure, there are significant in terms of the program needs are significant in terms of office, storage, cafe, programming needs, including summer camp space needs, stage size requirements, and the ability to have ample space and facilities to support sound and lighting, access to the building at all hours for setup, takedown, ample backstage facilities for performers to await their cues to do costume changes, etc. Exclusive use of the stage and building at times when the stage is being prepared for and undergoing a show. There cannot be other groups coming and going using the stage or even seating here in the area where they're up for a 2-week show run. I feel it's important that any RFP to stipulate that the use of Jeffrey School to accommodate this robust programming needs to be commensurate with current use and space program requirements of the Arts Barn level and scope of programming. To include enlarging the stage and adding office space, conference space, storage space, and access to the kitchen to utilize as the Arts Barn Cafe for the purposes of this RFP or any other umbrella RFP for this task. And then he gave some examples of language. My response was that I told him I appreciated his thoughtful comments. And I said, as to the Arts Barn, I agree that there needs to be a full program statement, much like the one I sent out for the Madison Youth and Family Services. Peter shared with me that I sent that out to everyone, and I hope you had a chance to read it. It was done by a local firm here in Madison, and I thought it was done quite well. But that kind of statement would need to be done for the Arts Barn for us to consider. I need to share, though, that the reason the Arts Barn is under evaluation is two reasons. One is that there is a suggestion of what that's potentially is one of the desirable sites for a proposed regional dispatch center, and Ryerson is also a potential option. So second, the limitations and repair needs that you detail. That being said, we are not recommending any changes at this time, just seeking out options for a host of needs that need to be prioritized. We will welcome working with Robin, the director, and others that she suggests to properly understand the program physical needs. I also said that we should have, what we should do is develop the program during the time of the RFP evaluation so that whoever is the successful consultant would then be translated to that program. So, and I understand that, Peggy, you met with the folks from the Arts Barn as well and started having some conversations. So that was the, enough said. I'll open that up now. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, the Arts Barn, develops programming based on their space that's allowed to them and available to them. So I think whatever decisions are made, that there will still be an opportunity to provide robust programming, whether it's at the Arts Barn building or whether it's at Jeffrey. So I think we just have to go through the process, and I told Robin very clearly, this is an exploration process, but that building has huge capital needs also, and the town can't make big capital investments in a building for a group that is not part of town government. So, those are the types of conversations that we'll have to have, that if the Arts Barn is going to stay there, we're going to have to figure out how we fund the renovation. And, maybe there's a different type of relationship that we have with the Arts Barn going forward. Right now, they use the space. They don't pay for anything for the space, which is they're doing a valued service for the community. And we handle all the maintenance for it. So, I think this is worthy of, taking it to the next level. And it may be that in the review process, the determination is that Jeffrey doesn't work, maybe there are other needs that the town has for the space at Jeffrey. And then we'll have to address the Arts Barn situation differently, figuring out a way we can kind of partner with them going forward on that building. So, but I still feel comfortable having it included as part of the analysis. They're aware that it's there, and and I'm assuming this would they would be interviewed by the consultants, right, about what their needs are, the types of programming they have, all that stuff.
I would think that I'd be happy to reach out to Robin and share with her the kind of program statement that was prepared for Madison Youth and Family Services, and suggest that this is the kind of document that needs to be created for them, so that information for us is clear. Their understanding is appropriate.
I think the difference though is one is part of town government, right? And one is a nonprofit organization that's using town space though too. But absolutely, I think they need to kind of be a part of this process, but and prepare something like that. I would definitely reach out to her and talk to her, and they'll be part of the discussion and being interviewed and everything else as part of the review process.
With that, I also sent out a comments I shared with you, Peggy, as well as the rest of the committee on the idea of an umbrella. And thinking about it, I think what we're trying to do is, I mean, the biggest piece of this is that we think there are different skill sets for the three RFPs. Clearly, the Jeffrey and the Memorial Town Hall are probably the closest aligned in terms of architectural, but the people that are really good at architectural for theaters are not necessarily the people that are really good for architectural for a place like Jeffrey. And so, and I do think that it's a totally different skill set for the open space, the underutilized space. So what I don't want to do is I don't want to get a competitive situation where one company comes in that's kind of okay at everything but not good at anything. I'd rather make sure that we get the right people doing the right things. And if it happens that one of these companies can do multiple of these things very well, then I think that's great. So therefore, maybe if we do so my suggestion is that we do a transmittal letter that kind of says, this is our goals and objectives of what we're trying to do. These are each of the three RFPs. It's a separate scope of work in each of these three. Have a price sheet that says, this is what you would charge for doing each of those things independently. And if you can do multiple things, what is your price sheet for that? And then only having one for all the backup qualifications, references, technical kind of things, rather than having three separate things that all have to be evaluated, so that we could then bring them all in. Basically, we could actually consolidate the interview processes and kind of get it done a little bit more effectively. But they wouldn't need to.
I mean, I like that better because I just thought it was going to get like confusing, with all these different things. And then we're going to set up interviews. And then, if one group is, responding to all three, are we going to do we have to handle it differently, procurement wise, separate, separate interviews, separate, I just thought it was nice to have an umbrella. But, if you think the best way to handle it is through this transmittal letter, I'm okay with that. Peter, are you guys good with that? Because I know you and Ben had raised concerns about, because it gets into procurement too. So it's like, okay, we're going to have a whole separate process for each separate RFP.
Well, from the facilities end of it, we were concerned that the three were going to create a lot of questions, and that was going to lead to some confusion. So the one document kind of consolidated all that into one very clear-cut proposal for all three different areas.
I think if it goes out as one RFP, the firm has a question about the land use, it's going to be a request for information or an RFI that comes through. I don't know. I would think it's going to be the same amount of RFIs if it's three separate. It's one RFP because they're three separate scopes. I think you touched on, David, what we want to avoid, or at least I think you and I are on the same page, is a jack of all trades. Jack of all trades is going to make us happy in one out of the three areas. It's not going to make us happy in two out of three or three. I totally agree with that. And if it's one umbrella, if it's three separate, I personally don't care. And I just want to have the ability to not get stuck with one firm doing everything that is a land development type of firm trying to play theater designer or structural engineer. That makes sense. So whether it's one umbrella, whether it's a three separate transmittal, yeah, it makes no difference to me. I think we can whether you do three separate or you do a transmittal with three separate, however you want to describe it, you can still select the same firm for all three. I do see value in not having to interview 3 rounds for each. One for each if you put them outside, I get that. There's certainly an advantage there for everyone here, at least. I don't see a big economy of scale. I see economy of scale in the cost of administrative when you put the RFPs out and receive it. But I don't see a big economy of scale because whether you're one team or you're 3 separate teams, it's still the same amount of work to learn the scope of work and to achieve the objective of the provide a deliverable. So they may put savings on there if they get more than one, but that's strictly from a revenue perspective and not from an expertise perspective. So
I can't believe any savings would be that great. So, you still got three disciplines, no matter how you look at it. And I think maybe there would be a little bit, I don't think it would be very much. One other thing I want to clarify. With the Arts Barn, with the extent of the Arts Barn, that's a big chunk of stuff. Is there some point in this process that we should tell the competitors for that particular RFP what the nature of the Arts Barn would be? I think that would affect it.
That's why I would like to get that program statement, like there is for youth and family services, because basically this East Wharf consultants that the East Wharf architects. I mean, I read through what they did for Madison Youth and Family Services, and I thought it was excellent. And in fact, I think they should be one of the groups that we want to invite to talk about Jeffrey, for example. I think they'd be very good at the Jeffrey conversation. I don't think they'd have any chance of being very good at Memorial Town Hall, honestly, just kind of been the basis of what I kind of know about it. But nonetheless, they seem to be much better, because I think the Jeffrey needs are much more about space programming within the existing structure, some modifications, rather than a totally new type of design. So that's my view. I like I said, I think the Arts Barn is we have to have much greater, deeper discussions on that, because obviously the connection between the town and the Arts Barn and financing and supporting and all that kind of stuff it's not our job, unless we're going to.
No, I agree. And that would be a bigger conversation. I think the first question is, we feel if, we need that space, that the building they're in, that we want to find them a home that accommodates their needs, right? So I think that's where the exploration at Jeffrey is worthy of that conversation. It may not be appropriate for them at the end of the day. Then we have to go back to the conversation about, okay, do they stay at the Arts Barn? And then how do we change that relationship so that we can start making the improvements that are needed at that, building? There's other tenants in Morrill Town Hall, Charlotte Everett's Archives. That's a nonprofit. It is not a town entity. So I think this becomes a broader conversation that the Board of Selectmen needs to have about what our policies are. The Powder House is the Chamber of Commerce. That's also not an entity of town government. So we have they're not alone. They tend to have the biggest building, right? But I think this will lead to a better policy development, by the town to handle these going forward. Because it becomes frustrating. Peter's lived through it with expectations of the users, and the limitations that we have of what we can do for these groups, in terms of improvements in their space.
If I can interrupt 1 second, Peggy, this is very interesting, because I thought like the archives was part of the town government. I didn't realize they were.
No.
I knew Arts Barn was independent. I think it's going to be very important for us to understand the relationships of some of these quote unquote tenants or quasi tenants. Yeah. Is there any financial? Does the chamber pay for the town?
No, we get nothing from any of these groups, and the view is that they provide value to the community, right? So, but the chamber doesn't pay anything. We cover all utilities and maintenance for all the outside groups that use town space. No one pays us anything. As far as I'm aware, I'm pretty sure that's 100%. They provide cable service or whatever. And same with the probate court. So that's why when I talked about Morrill Town Hall displacement, that's part of the conversation about, we're going to make a big investment in the building. you know, that's those groups, which are important groups. I mean, Charlotte Everett's Archives is a very important, you know, group for our town. So we just have to think it through and figure out how we want to do it. And I do feel that the town needs to be better at establishing MOUs and lease agreements when appropriate. You know, with these groups going forward. And then we've started having those conversations with the Arts Barn, and then I just put it on hold because we knew we were going through this exercise. I don't think anything exists for Charlotte Efforts as far as I'm aware of, and I don't think anything exists with the chamber either. Now, the chamber also, that's the visitor center, right? So they kind of run that for us. That's kind of like the implied partnership there. So, you know, they're doing good things for the town and serving a purpose. And but I think as we go through this exercise, one of the outcomes eventually should be some sort of policy around this.
Is there a list of who those tenants are? Are those pretty much it, probate court?
And the Madison Land Trust has offices in Memorial Town Hall as well. I mean, I had to go to them to ask them if Youth and Family could take a little bit of the space. They just use it for storage. Also, the Madison Foundation stores files in the Powder House. So we found that out. So they have a bunch of, you know, file drawers and stuff. So these are, you know, important civic groups in town. But I think it's good to have the, you know, record of it. And it's through just, you know, historical legacy from people knowing about this stuff, right?
It's crucial if we end up making recommendations that affect their lives without talking to them. It's
Yeah.
It would be a major phone call on our part.
Yeah, no, and so that would be that's why I was thinking with the Memorial Town Hall thing, understanding the users and, you know, and the space needs, because I don't know how it's going to work with the removal of the floor and opening it up into the assembly hall if that displaces office space on one of the floors. I can't remember the building setup. That's why I was thinking like, okay, you're going to blow out, you know, the second floor, or is that become the auditorium, or is it you go on flight one more? I don't know, you know. And I was like, so you're basically knocking out probate, Charlotte Everett's, you know. Yeah, so that's all the stuff we have to work through, but you know, it's an important part of the conversation moving forward. Like I said, the Arts Barn is the most significant because they have an entire large building that is being used, and their programming is being run by a nonprofit group. They do a great job, but it's not a town function, you know. It could become a town function, and you know, it could be more an arm of another programming arm of us at one point.
I think there's also the Madison Cable, right? Cable access. Madison Cable, isn't Madison Cable access up at the Arts Barn too?
Oh, yeah, we forgot Madison Cable Access. They're the whole front section. So you're right. And they have a big swath of space that is probably not needed. You know, they have like and that's part, we offer that as for free as part of community service, right? And then the problem with the Madison Cable Access is their revenue is declining rapidly because it's based on subscribership. So, you know, the cable companies fund them. They have broadcasting booth and, you know, tower and all that. And, you know, they're getting smaller and smaller because everybody's signing off from cable and, you know, streaming now. So it's been interesting to see that group, you know, and how they're being used. So that's a good point. You know, Peter, I'm glad you mentioned that because we always forget about them, but they're actually how much square footage do they have in the front of that?
They have probably 25% of the building.
Yeah. And I don't know like what the requirements are today under the, you know, what we have to provide for public access cable anymore. A lot of this is, I would say, legacy stuff from years and years ago. But you know, we'd have to address that as well.
Okay, well, within that context, there's other things that we have to do, but clearly the RFPs in front of us, I think the vast majority of the RFPs are probably acceptable to everybody. And if we write this umbrella kind of presentation that explains it, that gives options for pricing and things of that nature. Is that acceptable to the group? Let me put it out there. I think we need to vote on that. Judge that says, we'll accept these RFPs with that umbrella.
Whatever's easiest for these guys to put out, balance that with us having some autonomy to select more than one firm for everything. We can achieve both of those. Okay. Through an umbrella. Well, we agree. I think that's a good idea.
So if, I guess, put a motion on the table that we accept the structure of 3 RFPs under some sort of an umbrella presentation that I'll be happy to work out with Peter and his group and then forward to everybody for final sign off. So basically, the fundamentally it's proven this way. Is that
Second.
all in favor? Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I'm going to move to number 6. I forwarded on a few days ago in preparation for this meeting, people that that we thought, talking with John and Nick and I and others, that may be good at doing this work. So for Memorial Town Hall, David Thompson and Associates that are on New Haven. David Thompson, just for everybody's information, is the successor firm to Roth and Moore that did a lot of redesign on Memorial Town Hall back in the 90s. So they're a firm that's familiar with that. East Wharf Architects, I think, since they're Madison based, probably should include them. Patrick Quinn. We did meet Patrick Quinn Architects at the Surf Club presentation, but they also have a full practice that Nick is aware of that specializes in theaters, as well as Tecton and Antonazzi. All 3 of those have done theaters and have done those kinds of structures. So those were the folks that we thought, I don't know how, when you send out an RFP, it just is a public thing. You can let people know that it's public.
You can make people aware that the RFP is on the street.
So the only other one is whether, I don't know if John Matthews, I think his firm's.
Yeah,
I know he's involved, but I'm not sure. I don't think he's involved. He's pretty much retired. I don't know if he's got other people that are working for him, whether since he's done so much other work. I don't know, Peggy, you might know better than I do if he's involved much.
I know he's still actively working on projects, but I don't know if he's really taking on, I'm not sure. I know he's been involved in recent submissions.
I saw him not long ago, and that's exactly what he said. So it was just, he had stuff he was doing, but he wasn't really looking for
This
heavy involved.
Is there any, if there's others, there's 5 folks for Memorial Town Hall right there. For Jeffrey, I think several, again, East Wharf Architects as well as Patrick is probably good for, they also have a fairly large space planning. I'd like to have somebody on that team that has some kind of building experience. So whether, a Gilbane type firm that, or, I know Colliers has done some of that work for the town, but there may be others who can come and kind of, as we're looking through, they can say, this is a structural, this is, they can provide that kind of engineering kind of guidance that you could do something with this or not. Damaging, professional perspective. So I do think that there needs to be some kind of engineering bent on that. So I think that space is a skill, any kind of space planning skills is really important. I thought that, one of the firms that I was impressed by was B&L, and it's the Surf Club, and I thought they had a so they had a lot of architectural engineering and space planning type skills that they presented. I thought they were very good. I thought Kent and Frost was a good firm, but I'm not sure they had the same level of expertise, depth of perspective. And given that they're doing the surf club, I'm not sure we want to muddy their waters, if you will, or their focus. So those are the people I was thinking about for the Jeffrey. And then
Michael Ward.
I think for the Royal Town Hall, two pretty distinct disciplines there. One is the theatrical component, right, and whether or not that space can.
But
theatrical.
I guess, David, could I just ask, because this is a public process that we're issuing, so we really just need to wait and see who responds. I mean, we can always forward, we all have contacts, right? We can say, hey, look, the town issued this, but I feel like we need to just be open-minded to see who actually responds and let them submit. So I think yeah. So I wouldn't disagree. All those firms, are great firms. And I think, once it's issued on the town website, I think we can, as individuals can like forward it and make them aware of it. We'll do a public, normally, Peter, we put it on the, state list, right?
It usually goes on the state list, then it would, we usually send it out to the New Haven Register. Goes on our website, where where all the other bids are located, so it's very well publicly announced.
Yeah. So I guess I'm just highlighting, I don't want it to be perceived during this conversation that somehow we have favorites already, that's all. Because we'll be open-minded, obviously, and be listening to everybody that submits.
And the only other firm that I wanted to bring share to people's attention is Tisch Planning, that John Guskowski, he was the interim planner for the town before Aaron, and after Dave Anderson. Their firm does a lot of this kind of, what do you do with this space kind of stuff. So they have a lot of expertise in that area. So I would hope they would see this as an opportunity to respond. Zach.
Yeah. Well, they are actually I think they were just hired to do our zoning regulations.
Oh, okay.
So, if I recall, I think we just voted on that. So they did our POCD, and they were the consultant on that, and then they were just hired for our zoning regulations review. So, but if they choose to submit to us, it'll be interesting to see from a staffing standpoint, how they would approach this.
Great. I'll move on to the next item, which are the other discussions of meetings that I've had since our last meeting. I did get an email from Haley Marcos. She runs Your After School, and she asked if they could talk to us about renting space at Jeffrey for their after school programs. To discuss it. She was asking to discuss it. I'll be happy to discuss it with her, but my response is that it's really quite premature to do much of anything at this stage, because we'll have to wait till after these RFPs and the planning and that kind of stuff before we can really.
Who reached out to you?
It's a woman named Haley Marcus, Marcous. She runs. Her business is called Your After School.
Oh, okay. So this is not somebody who's running. Okay. Yeah.
So, and she lives here in town.
Okay. Yeah, we are going through a comprehensive discussion about management of our before after school program. I've been having conversations with the Board of Education and the Austin, who's in charge of that program. So that is going to be an ongoing conversation about who runs that program, because there's a lot of challenges with staffing running that. And then You know, obviously, right now they're all run in the schools versus in a separate building, because now you gotta have transportation. So, you know, the nice thing is the kids just stay at school, and the program's right there, right? Versus having to ship them to Jeffrey. But we've talked about that. Like, would that be something we might want to consider concentrating it? But I think that's all very premature. But we're kind of going through that discussion process now about the management of the program.
I'll respond to her email and.
Yeah.
Or to-
You can refer her to me if you want, because that's, you know, we are going through operational discussions about that program, so.
Okay, I will let her know that as well. And then on the 7th of August, I met with Dr. Craig Cook. He and I, after touring Ryerson and Jeffrey, we had a quick conversation and said it would be good for us to sit down and just kind of go over things. So we sat down for about an hour on the 7th, and I wrote up my notes from the meeting that I went back, shared with Craig, and he reviewed them and made edits and agreed that this is a fair presentation of the comments of what was out there. I wanted to try to take a more of a 10,000 foot view of the schools and where they're going over time, so that we have a better perspective on the needs. Some of the quick highlights, in my view, in my mind at least, is that in terms of demographics, we're kind of in a lull or in a valley, if you will, on their demographical profile, and that will probably move between, by 2034, we'll probably be close to 3,000, if not exceeding 3,000 students, where that's up from 2,450 right now. So he was concerned because the state limits you to an 8-year demographic profile, and it'd be much easier to look at it 10 or 15 years out to get a more accurate view. But nonetheless, he felt that because of that 8-year look, that we probably didn't build Neck River as large as it should have been built in order to accommodate some of the future, because he believes that future growth really is in the pre-K to 5, not in the upper schools. That's going to be the real need. So he was excited about us as having a priority to preserve a building site, potentially for a new school down the road, which may be 10 years out, but nonetheless, I think that's something we'll have to put on as a high priority. We felt that between 6 and 12, there's room to grow in the facilities that accommodate that population, and that the birth, families are moving in with younger children, so that's basically the bottom line. And that he also made that whole pre-K programming for ages 3 to 4 is really an important thing that we're going to have to be dealing with, especially if it becomes a state mandate in the next few years. We talked about special education. He said this was interesting to me, that 14% of the population has some sort of special needs. And that's increasing at a rate of roughly 1/4 to 0.5% a year. That's a large group of students that has it, and which really actually affects, the utilization of space. So that what's happening is that the number of students per room is dropping, so that the utilization of the room, which used to be 20 to 25, is now moving to 10 to 15 over time, which is really driving the infrastructure of school systems. So that's an important issue. When we talked about new functions or new space needs, he felt that the pre-K was the number one item that was out there. He felt that some sort of career type school classroom type space for either manufacturing or some sort of trade shop type of functions need to be re-put into the school system. Felt that, things like computer labs, one of the reasons he felt that the spaces in the 6 to 12 is adequate is because all the rooms that were once computer labs are no more. Because everybody has a computer with them, so you don't do that anymore. So those spaces have now been repurposed and can be reused. He did identify that the last accreditation was very good, except for an adequate high school gym and an adequate high school auditorium. Those are two functions, and so he would like to really look at the design of the whole dining and assembly hall area as a way to change and satisfy some of those needs. And potentially could the outdoor area next to Jeffrey be built as a new high school gymnasium type of idea. But he was raising that kind of thing. Transportation, he felt that transportation is a challenge. Obviously, the state mandates that we provide transportation for every student, even though only about half the students are ever on the buses at any given day. I didn't think it was that much.
It's like 55% for the elementary and about 25% for the grade 6 through 12.
But he says the issue is that it's not consistent every day.
No.
So some days you get more kids, and other days you have less. Every day of the week it kind of changes. So it really drives that whole thing. So it has a lot of lack of predictability. Since right now the current location is inadequate, that they're parking buses at the school and at the town campus and other places, and the other issue is that there's a big shortage of bus drivers. That's and with the growing special needs population, there's special needs transportation that is growing. So that's a transportation is an issue. Athletics, he felt there's shortage of fields and courts because all the needs are happening at the same time. So he felt to accommodate that. Basically, the small gym at Polson is something that's in major need of updating, and that a small gym is needed for a number of the other sports like fencing and things of that nature. So that struck me that one of the Jeffrey functions, that small gym at Jeffrey might be a very useful space to satisfy some of those needs. He felt that the existing playgrounds and fields became a good option for a practice field or an additional gymnasium structure at Jeffrey. And he also felt that a pool would be a very important school asset as well as a community asset. Right now, they currently bus students to the bubble for practice, and then they go out of town for meets. Usually it's to Brantford, Y is where at least the home meets are, and then they go to other meets. But that understanding of pool is important.
David, if you wouldn't mind, I've got to sign. I'm fading here with this cold. I'm going to drop off now if that's okay, because I did read your notes and I did talk to Dr. Cook as well. So a great conversation that you had. I thought it was all very good input.
The last piece was the Board of Ed. And he felt that the space here was getting too small for them and they needed some changes to it. But he was very open to the idea of moving to Jeffrey and creating the right kind of space, because he felt that as this student population starts to grow, there's going to be more global special administrators that will be across all schools that will have to be housed at the Board of Ed offices. So, and that he also felt that there was a huge amount of coordination between Youth and Family Services and Board of Ed and having that. amongst the schools. He thought that was really strong. So that was my conversation with him. I thought it was excellent, and it really gave me some insight to things that I hadn't thought about before. Any comments or questions? No? We have fun. The last item is we have 2 vacancies on the committee. I don't know, Peggy, I believe one person has sent in an application, but I'm not positive. Do you know the status of that?
That might be the case. I'll follow up with Jeannie. I don't know where we stand with the application, so I'll find out.
Because we need to kind of,
Yeah.
I've had conversations with several different people, and with the hopes that they would apply, and I pointed them to the website. I did share with everybody on the committee. I wrote a kind of a quick prospectus, and if anybody is interested, that we could share, kind of give some guidance on it. I hope that is acceptable or is a fair way of doing it. In there, it says, if you're interested, you have to go to the application site on the town website and apply, fill it out, and get into the process.
Yeah, I'll follow up with her. I'm not sure where we stand on that, so.
Last item was, I asked Peggy to see if we could set up a briefing for the Democratic Town Committee as well as Republican Town Committee. I'm also thinking if there's other groups like Men Over 60 or other groups that we may want to go talk to share what's going on, I think that would be also helpful. I believe I'm going to be on the September agenda for the Republican Town Committee. I don't have the date on that yet. I'm hoping it's before the 14th when I leave on vacation for 2 weeks. If not, one of you guys will have to do that. I have not heard yet from the Democratic Town Committee.
Okay.
And if there's other, I'll just open it up if anybody has other ideas of other public outreach type groups that we should be having conversations with.
Well, I think there's Exchange Club, Rotary, I've gone to Rotary before to talk about things. Exchange Club, not been invited there, but I have gone to Rotary and been invited, and they're always looking for interesting topics, I think, for their meetings, that are community focused. I go to the Shoreline Men Over 60 annual every year. All the first selectmen go in May. They meet monthly. I'm trying to think, the chamber it might be worth, although they're not really, they're business owners. So I don't know if the chamber is worth, having a conversation with, but just some other thoughts. So.
Okay. All right, well, we'll reach out to those groups as well. All right, with that, if there's any other new business or any other business that's out there? Well, with that, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Thank you all very
All right,
much.
yeah, thank you. All right.